Daniel Carter stood alone in the center of the great chamber. The Galactic Council surrounded him on all sides. Hundreds of alien faces looked down at him from their elevated seats. Some showed hatred, some showed fear, most showed nothing at all. The chains on his wrists were heavy. They had designed them for creatures much larger than humans. Daniel felt the cold metal dig into his skin, but he did not let the pain show on his face. He was the ambassador of Earth. He would not give them the satisfaction of seeing him suffer. High Counselor rose from his throne at the highest point of the chamber. The leader was tall and thin, with gray skin and eyes like black pools. He moved with the confidence of someone who had never been told no in his entire life. "Daniel Carter of Earth," said, his voice echoed through the chamber. "You have been found guilty of espionage against the Empire. You have stolen military secrets. You have plotted against the peace of this galaxy. The sentence is death." Daniel looked up at the High Counselor. He knew the charges were lies. Everyone in this chamber knew the charges were lies, but truth did not matter here. Power mattered, and they had more power than anyone else. Senator Price jumped to his feet in the human section of the gallery. His face was red with anger. "This is murder," he shouted. "You have shown no evidence. You have allowed no defense. Earth demands a fair trial for our ambassador." Turned his cold eyes toward the human senator. "Earth demands nothing," he said. "Earth is a young species. You have been among the stars for less than 200 years. They have ruled for 10,000. You do not make demands of us. You follow our laws or you face the consequences." "What laws?" shot back. "You invented these charges yesterday. Daniel Carter is a man of peace. He came here to build friendship between our peoples, and you reward him with execution." The other species in the chamber remained silent. Daniel watched them, the with their 4 arms, the with their blue skin, the with their mechanical bodies. All of them looked away. None of them would speak against the cowards, Daniel thought, every single one of them. Smiled, it was not a pleasant expression. "The vote has been taken. The council has decided. The human ambassador will be executed at sunset. This session is closed." Tried to push forward, but guards blocked his path. Daniel caught his eye and shook his head slowly. There was nothing more to be done here. The decision had been made long before this trial began. The guards led Daniel out of the chamber. They took him to a small cell with white walls and no windows. He sat on the cold floor and waited. He thought about his family back on Earth. His daughter was 7 years old now. He had promised her he would be home for her birthday. He would not be keeping that promise. Hours passed. The door opened and was allowed inside for a final visit. The senator looked like he had aged 10 years in a single day. "I am sorry," Daniel said. His voice was broken. "I tried everything. I called Earth. I begged the other species for help. No one will stand against the..." Daniel stood and placed a hand on his friend's shoulder. "This is not your fault. Planned this from the beginning. He wants to humiliate Earth. He wants to show the galaxy that humans are weak and alone." "Earth will not let this stand," said. "President Cole is already calling an emergency meeting. The fleet is being mobilized." Daniel nodded slowly. "Tell them something for me. Tell Admiral Monroe something." "Anything." Daniel leaned close and whispered in his ear. The senator's eyes went wide, but he nodded. He understood. The guards came and took away. Daniel was alone again. At sunset, they brought him to the execution platform. It was located in the central plaza of Axiom Prime Station. Thousands of aliens had gathered to watch. The event was being broadcast to every system in the galaxy. Daniel walked with his head held high. He did not stumble. He did not beg. He was a representative of humanity, and he would show them what humans were made of. Stood on a balcony above the plaza. He raised his hand for silence. "Let this be a lesson to all young species," the High Counselor announced. "The Galactic Council is the supreme authority in this galaxy. Those who challenge us will be destroyed. Those who plot against us will die." Daniel looked directly at the camera that was broadcasting his image across the stars. He knew that billions of humans were watching. He knew that Admiral Lisa Monroe was watching from Fleet Command. He knew that his daughter was probably watching too. He spoke his final words clearly and calmly. "My name is Daniel Carter. I am innocent of all charges. I die today not because of anything I have done, but because they fear what humanity will become. They fear our potential. They fear our spirit." He paused and smiled. "They should." Made a cutting gesture with his hand. The execution beam fired. Daniel Carter ceased to exist. On Earth, Admiral Lisa Monroe stood in the command center of Fleet Headquarters. She watched the broadcast in complete silence. Around her, officers and crew members stared at their screens in shock. Some were crying. Some were shaking with rage. Monroe felt something cold settle in her chest. It was not grief. It was not fear. It was something far more dangerous. It was purpose. Her communication device buzzed. President Cole's voice came through. He sounded tired but determined. "Admiral Monroe, you saw what happened." "Yes, sir, I saw." "They think we are weak. They think we will cry and complain and do nothing. They think we will accept this insult and move on." Monroe's hand tightened into a fist. "What are your orders, sir?" There was a long pause. When the president spoke again, his voice was like iron. "Prepare the fleet, Admiral, every ship, every soldier, every weapon we have." Another pause. "We are going to teach the galaxy a lesson they will never forget." Monroe ended the call. She turned to face her officers. They were all looking at her, waiting for direction, waiting for hope. "You heard the president," she said. Her voice carried across the room like thunder. "Daniel Carter was our friend. He was our ambassador. He was murdered in cold blood by creatures who thought we would do nothing." She let those words sink in. They were wrong. She walked to the main display and began entering commands. "Recall all ships to Earth. Cancel all leave. Activate reserve forces. We move in 72 hours. One of her officers stepped forward. "Admiral, the fleet outnumbers us 5-1. How can we possibly win?" Monroe turned to face him. There was fire in her eyes. "Because they have never faced humans who have nothing left to lose. Because they do not know what we are capable of when someone hurts our people. Because Daniel Carter told me something before he died." She paused. "He told me their weakness, and we are going to exploit it." The room erupted into action. Officers ran to their stations. Communications flew across the planet and beyond. The greatest military mobilization in human history had begun. The thought they had broken humanity's spirit. They had only awakened something far worse. 3 days after Daniel Carter's execution, the human ambassador to the Empire delivered a formal message to High Counselor. The message was simple. Earth demanded that, and all officials involved in Daniel's death surrender themselves to face trial. They had 7 days to comply. Read the message in his throne room, surrounded by his advisors and generals. When he finished, he began to laugh. The sound echoed off the stone walls and high ceiling. "The humans make demands of us," he said between laughs. "These primitive apes who discovered fire only yesterday now think they can threaten the Empire." His advisors laughed with him. Fleet Commander, the head of military forces, stepped forward with a confident smile. "My lord, should I send a fleet to Earth to remind them of their place?" Waved his hand dismissively. "No, let them make their noise. In a week they will realize they have no power here. They will accept this humiliation and return to their little corner of the galaxy. The humans are cowards at heart. They talk about honor and justice, but when faced with real power, they always back down." He ordered his servants to broadcast his response across all channels. The galaxy watched as the High Counselor mocked humanity's demands. "Earth asks us to surrender our leaders for their judgment," announced with a sneer. "We answer with laughter. The humans are children playing at war. If they wish to fight the Empire, they are welcome to try. We will crush them like insects and add their worlds to our territory. This is our final response." On Earth, Admiral Lisa Monroe watched the broadcast in her private office. Her face showed no emotion, but inside she felt a strange sense of satisfaction. Was arrogant. He underestimated humanity. That was exactly what she needed. General Palmer, the head of military intelligence, entered her office with a tablet in his hands. "Admiral, we have finished analyzing the intelligence Daniel sent us before his death." Monroe gestured for him to continue. Palmer placed the tablet on her desk and activated a holographic display. "Daniel discovered that they have been planning this for over a year. They wanted to test human resolve. They believe that if they humiliate us badly enough, we will accept second-class status in the galaxy forever. They also believe we lack the military strength to challenge them." "What else?" Monroe asked. "Their main fleet is concentrated around there and 3 key systems, but their border defenses are spread thin. They never expected anyone to actually attack them. No one has challenged thee in 800 years." Monroe studied the display. Her mind was already working on battle plans. "What about the other species? Will any of them help the—" Palmer shook his head. "Our spies report that most species are afraid of the, not loyal to them. If we can prove that they can be beaten, many will abandon them. Some might even join us." Monroe nodded slowly. "Then we do not just need to win. We need to win in a way that shocks the entire galaxy." She dismissed Palmer and called Captain to her office. Was the commander of the warship Retribution, one of Earth's most advanced vessels. He was young for a captain, only 35, but he had proven himself in a dozen engagements against pirates and hostile aliens. "Captain," Monroe said as he entered, "how soon can the Retribution be ready for combat?" Stood at attention. "She is ready now, Admiral. My crew has been working around the clock since the ambassador's death. Every system is at full capacity." Monroe handed him a sealed envelope. "These are your orders. You will not open them until you reach the designated coordinates. Understood?" Took the envelope and tucked it into his jacket. "Understood, Admiral. May I ask what we are going to do?" Monroe stood and walked to the window. Outside, she could see dozens of warships gathering in Earth's orbit. More were arriving every hour from across human space. "We are going to show the galaxy what happens when you murder one of our people," she said quietly. "They think they know us. They think we are soft and weak because we prefer peace. They are about to learn that humans do not forget, and we do not forgive." Nodded, there was determination in his eyes. Like everyone else in the fleet, he had known Daniel Carter. Like everyone else, he wanted justice. "One more thing, Captain," Monroe added. "We have received intelligence that one official opposed Daniel's execution. Ambassador. She has been quietly providing us with information about fleet movements. A traitor to her own people." Monroe shook her head. "She believes is leading her people to destruction. She may be right." She paused. "If you encounter her during the operation, she is not to be harmed. She has earned our protection." Saluted and left to join his ship. The next few days were filled with activity. Human ships from every colony and outpost returned to Earth. Merchant vessels were converted into supply ships. Factories worked day and night to produce weapons and ammunition. The entire human race mobilized for war. On the 6th day, Admiral Monroe stood before the assembled fleet commanders in the Great Hall of Fleet Headquarters. 300 officers filled the room, representing every ship in Earth's Navy. "In 24 hours, we will launch the largest military operation in human history," Monroe announced. "Our target is not we will not attack civilians or destroy cities. We are not monsters." She activated a holographic map of the galaxy. "Our target is Station. It is the main military installation in the border region. It houses their forward fleet and their regional command center. When we destroy it, we will send a message that cannot be ignored. One of the commanders raised her hand. Admiral, station is heavily defended. Even with our full fleet, we will be outnumbered. Monroe smiled. It was not a friendly expression. They have never fought humans before. They do not know our tactics. They do not know our weapons. And they do not know our determination. She looked around the room. Daniel Carter gave his life to send us intelligence about weaknesses. We are going to use every piece of it. She dismissed the commanders to prepare their ships. That night, Admiral Monroe broadcast a final message to the galaxy. Her face appeared on screens across thousands of worlds. This message is for all species of the Galactic Council. In 24 hours, Earth will launch a military strike against the Empire. This action is in response to the murder of our ambassador, Daniel Carter. We do not seek conquest. We do not seek genocide. We seek justice. She paused and let her words sink in. Any species that stands with the will be treated as an enemy. Any species that remains neutral will not be harmed. Any species that wishes to join us against tyranny is welcome. She leaned forward, her eyes burning with intensity. I say this, you thought you could kill our people without consequence. You were wrong. We are coming, and nothing in this galaxy will stop us. The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, species that had laughed at humanity's demands fell silent. They watched the human fleet gather. They counted the ships. They ran calculations and projections. For the first time in 800 years, someone was going to challenge the Empire. High Counselor dismissed the threat as human bluffing. He ordered his border forces to prepare, but did not reinforce them. He was certain the humans would lose their nerve at the last moment. He could not have been more wrong. At dawn on the 7th day, the human fleet jumped to hyperspace. 120 warships vanished from Earth's orbit. Their destination was classified. They would find out soon enough. Station hung in the darkness of space like a massive metal flower. It was the pride of the border defense, home to 40 warships and 20,000 soldiers. Its weapons could destroy a small moon. Its shields could withstand an asteroid impact. Commander stood on the command deck and stared at the stars. He was bored. Nothing ever happened at station. The other species were too afraid to challenge and pirates knew better than to come near this much firepower. His communication officer looked up from her console with a confused expression. Commander, we are detecting multiple hyperspace signatures. Someone is coming. Frowned identification. Unknown, the signatures are strange. They do not match any known species. Before could respond, the first human ships emerged from hyperspace. Then more, and more. Within seconds, over 100 warships surrounded station in every direction. Stared at the display in shock. Humans, he whispered. They actually came. The communication system crackled to life. Admiral Lisa Monroe's voice filled the command deck. This is Admiral Monroe of the Earth Fleet. Station, you have 5 minutes to surrender. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. If you resist, you will be destroyed. This is your only warning. Recovered from his surprise, he was a commander. He did not surrender to inferior species. All ships battle stations, he ordered. Launch fighters. Target the human flagship. Show these animals what happens when they challenge us. The fleet moved into standard formation. It was the same formation they had used for centuries. Their 40 warships formed a defensive wall in front of the station, with fighters screening the flanks. On the bridge of the Retribution, Captain watched the enemy formation with a slight smile. They are using the standard defensive pattern, Lieutenant Peters reported from the tactical station, just as our intelligence predicted. Nodded, then they will react exactly as we expect. Signal the fleet, execute attack pattern Delta. The human fleet did something they had never seen before. Instead of forming their own wall to face the enemy, the human ships scattered. They broke into groups of 5 and 10, moving in seemingly random patterns. It looked like chaos. It was not chaos, it was precision. Commander Amy led her fighter squadron through the confusion. Her small craft darted between the larger warships, too fast and too nimble for the weapons to track. "Blue Squadron, follow me," she ordered. "We are going for the station's communication array. If we cut their ability to call for help, this battle ends much faster." Her fighters screamed toward station, while the main battle raged around them. They were not prepared for human tactics. Their weapons were designed to hit large, slow targets in predictable formations. The human ships moved constantly, changing speed and direction every few seconds. Their weapons were smaller than cannons, but they fired faster and more accurately. One cruiser turned to engage a group of human destroyers. Before it could fire, 3 other human ships appeared from different angles and struck its weak points simultaneously. The cruiser's shields collapsed. A final shot from Captain's Retribution tore through its hull. The cruiser exploded. Commander watched in horror as his fleet was torn apart. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "They are outnumbered. Their ships are smaller. How are they winning?" No one could answer him. Lieutenant Peters had discovered the key to shield technology months ago. Their shields were strong from the front but weak at specific angles near the engine section. Human targeting computers had been programmed to exploit this weakness. Every shot was aimed at the exact point where shields were thinnest. Ship after ship fell. They tried to adapt, but human tactics changed too quickly. Every time they adjusted their formation, the humans countered with something new. Commander and her fighters reached the station's communication array. Her wingman, Lieutenant Sam Brooks, marked the target. "There it is," he said. "One good shot and they cannot call for help." Lined up her attack run. Enemy fire streaked past her cockpit. She ignored it. She had one chance to make this shot count. She fired. The communication array exploded in a ball of flame. Station was now cut off from the rest of the Empire. Back in the main battle, the fleet was in full collapse. Half their ships were destroyed or disabled. The survivors tried to retreat toward the station's protection, but human ships cut them off. Captain guided the Retribution through the chaos. His ship had taken damage, but it was still fighting. He watched a battleship try to flee and gave the order to pursue. "All batteries target that ship. Do not let it escape." The Retribution's weapons hammered the fleeing battleship. Its shields failed. Its engines exploded. It drifted dead in space. Admiral Monroe's voice came over the fleet communication channel. "All ships, focus fire on the station's weapon systems. Disable their ability to fight back. We want that station intact." The human fleet obeyed. They were disciplined even in victory. Their weapons targeted specific systems on station, destroying weapons and shield generators while leaving the structure standing. Within 3 hours of the first shot, the battle was over. 40 warships were destroyed or captured. Station had surrendered. Human casualties were light. Only 2 ships lost, 300 crew members dead. Commander was brought before Admiral Monroe in the station's command center. His uniform was torn. His face was marked with burns from an electrical fire on his deck. "How?" he asked. His voice was hollow. "How did you defeat us? We had superior numbers, superior firepower, 800 years of military tradition." Monroe looked at him with cold eyes. "You had tradition. We had determination. You fought because it was your job. We fought because you killed someone we loved." She paused. "That is the difference between us." Was taken away to a holding cell. Admiral Monroe turned to the camera crew that had accompanied the fleet. They had recorded everything: the battle, the victory, the surrender. "Broadcast this across every channel," she ordered. "Make sure every species in the galaxy sees what happened here today." The footage spread like wildfire. Species that had dismissed humans as primitive watched in stunned silence as the mighty were defeated. Council members who had voted for Daniel Carter's execution suddenly felt very afraid. Monroe recorded a message to accompany the footage. This was for Daniel Carter, the ambassador you murdered in cold blood, the innocent man you killed to humiliate humanity. Her voice was calm but carried an edge of steel. We have taken your station. We have destroyed your border fleet, and we are just getting started. She looked directly into the camera. High Counselor, you have one chance left. Surrender yourself and face justice. If you refuse, we will come to you, and we will not be as merciful as we were today. The transmission ended. The High Counselor watched the footage with growing horror. His hands trembled as he saw his ships burn. His face turned pale as he heard Monroe's ultimatum. Mobilize the Grand Fleet, he ordered. His voice cracked slightly. Every ship we have, these humans want war, we will give them war. Fleet Commander bowed and left to carry out the order. Stared at the frozen image of Admiral Monroe on his screen. For the first time in his long life, he felt something he had not experienced before. Fear. The humans were coming, and he was no longer certain he could stop them. The Grand Fleet was a terrifying sight. 500 warships of every size and class gathered in the darkness between stars. It was the largest military force assembled in 3 centuries. Fleet Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and felt pride swell in his chest. Let the humans come, he said to his officers. They won a small victory against an unprepared border garrison. The Grand Fleet is a different matter entirely. We will crush them and burn their worlds. His scouts reported that the human fleet was moving deeper into space. 80 ships. Only 80 ships dared to challenge the Empire. Smiled, the humans were brave, he admitted that much. But bravery without numbers was just suicide. Set course to intercept, he ordered. We end this today. The Grand Fleet jumped to hyperspace, hunting for the human invaders. Admiral Monroe sat in her command chair aboard the Valiant, her flagship. She studied the tactical display with focused intensity. Her fleet was outnumbered more than 6 to 1. By any normal calculation, they could not win. But Monroe had never believed in normal calculations. Admiral, the Grand Fleet has left there, her sensor officer reported. They are heading toward our position. Monroe nodded. Good, that is exactly what we wanted. She activated the fleet communication channel. All ships, this is Monroe. The enemy fleet has taken the bait. Execute Phase 2. Across the galaxy, hidden systems activated. For the past year, Earth's intelligence services had secretly deployed stealth weapons platforms throughout space. These platforms were tiny, almost invisible to sensors. They had waited in silence for this moment. Now they woke up. The first explosions hit supply stations, then communication relays, then shipyards. Across 3 star systems, chaos erupted as hidden human weapons struck targets the thought were completely safe. Fleet Commander received the reports with growing alarm. What is happening? How are they hitting targets behind our lines? No one could explain it. They had never imagined that humans would think so far ahead. They had assumed this was a simple war of fleets against fleets. They did not understand that humans fought wars on every level: military, economic, psychological. The Grand Fleet pressed on despite the chaos, was determined to destroy the human fleet and end this humiliation. The 2 forces met in open space, far from any planet or station. They formed their traditional battle wall, 500 ships presenting a solid front of weapons and shields. It was an impressive display of power. Admiral Monroe looked at the enemy formation and felt no fear. She had expected this. She had planned for this. All ships, she said calmly, remember your training, remember why we are here. Fight for Earth, fight for Daniel Carter, and fight for each other. The battle began. Human ships dove into the formation like wolves attacking a herd. They did not try to match the enemy wall. They broke it apart piece by piece, isolating individual ships and destroying them before moving to the next. Captain commanded the retribution from the heart of the chaos. His ship had been repaired after station, but it still showed scars from the previous battle. Did not care about appearances. He cared about results. "Target that carrier," he ordered. "Take out its fighter bays before it can launch." The retribution surged forward, guns blazing. Lieutenant Peters calculated firing solutions with machine precision. Every shot found its mark. The carrier tried to turn away, but it was too slow. Human weapons tore through its shields and into its hull. Secondary explosions ripped through the ship as its own ammunition detonated. "Carrier destroyed," Peters reported. "Find the next target," said. There was no celebration. There was only the mission. Commander Amy led her fighters against impossible odds. Her squadron had been reduced to half strength, but they kept fighting. They protected the larger ships from enemy fighters. They made attack runs against enemy cruisers. They did things that pilots were not supposed to be able to do. Lieutenant Sam Brooks took a hit that destroyed his port engine. His fighter spun out of control. "Sam, eject," shouted. "Negative," Brooks responded through gritted teeth. "I can still fly. I can still fight." He steadied his damaged craft and continued the attack. That was the human way. Never give up. Never surrender. Fight until you cannot fight anymore, then find a way to fight some more. The battle raged for hours. They had numbers, but the humans had speed, precision, and fury. For every human ship that fell, 3 ships were destroyed. Fleet Commander watched his grand fleet crumble. He could not understand how this was happening. His ships were larger. His weapons were more powerful. His crews had centuries of tradition. But the humans fought as if they had nothing to lose. They took risks no sane commander would take. They sacrificed ships to save others. They never retreated, never hesitated, never showed fear. "Commander," his communication officer called out with panic in his voice, "we are receiving reports from the 3 species have withdrawn their support for the Empire. The Enda have declared neutrality. They are asking for peace talks with Earth." Felt the blood drain from his face. The political alliance that supported dominance was falling apart. The other species could smell weakness. They were abandoning the Empire like rats fleeing a sinking ship. In the Galactic Council chamber, Senator Price addressed the assembled delegates. Many seats were empty. The species that had supported them were hiding. The neutral species were watching with intense interest. "You all saw what happened at Station," Price said. "You all know what is happening now in the border regions. The empire that terrorized this galaxy for 800 years is falling, and Earth is the one bringing it down." He paused and looked at the remaining delegates. "My people did not want this war. We wanted peace. We wanted cooperation. We wanted to be part of this community." His voice hardened. "But you killed our ambassador. You executed an innocent man to prove a point, and now you will pay the price for that decision." The delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "Earth offers a simple choice," Price continued. "Stand aside and watch justice be done, or stand with thee and share their fate. There is no middle ground, not anymore." Back in the battle, the tide had turned completely. The Grand Fleet was in full retreat. Over 200 of their ships were destroyed. The survivors fled toward chased by human warships that showed no mercy. Admiral Monroe surveyed the destruction with grim satisfaction. Her own fleet had taken heavy losses, 20 ships destroyed, thousands of crew members dead. The cost was terrible. But the objective was achieved. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "Pursuit formation, we follow them to there." The human fleet gathered and jumped to hyperspace. They emerged in orbit above below them lay a planet of 10 billion souls. Cities covered every continent. Orbital stations surrounded the world like a ring of jewels. The survivors of the Grand Fleet formed a desperate defensive line. It was pitiful compared to their former strength. Less than 100 ships against Monroe's 60 survivors. Fleet Commander hailed the human flagship. His face appeared on Monroe's screen. He looked like a broken man. "Admiral Monroe," he said, "I am prepared to negotiate terms of surrender." Monroe shook her head slowly. "You do not have the authority to surrender. Only High Counselor can end this war, and he will surrender in person or we will continue our attack." "Please," begged. "There are billions of civilians on that planet. They have done nothing wrong. Do not punish them for crimes." Monroe considered his words. She thought about Daniel Carter. She thought about the hatred she felt for the. She thought about how easy it would be to order the bombardment of their cities. Then she thought about what Daniel would have wanted. He was a man of peace. He believed in justice, not revenge. He would not want innocent people to die because of madness. "You have 24 hours, Monroe said finally. "Deliver to us. If you do not, we will destroy every military installation on your planet, but we will not harm civilians. We are not monsters." She paused. "We are not you." The transmission ended. High Counselor watched from his palace as his empire collapsed around him. His fleet was broken. His allies had abandoned him. The humans were in orbit, ready to strike. He had never imagined this was possible. He had been so certain of superiority. He had been so confident that the humans would back down. He had been wrong about everything. And now the reckoning had come. They had not seen foreign warships in its skies for over 1,000 years. Now 60 human vessels hung above their cities like a promise of destruction. Every citizen looked up at the sky and wondered if this day would be their last. Admiral Lisa Monroe waited on the bridge of the Valiant. Her ultimatum had been delivered. 24 hours for the to surrender High Counselor. The clock was ticking. "Admiral," her communication officer reported, "we are receiving thousands of transmissions from the planet's surface. Civilians are begging us not to attack." Monroe closed her eyes for a moment. She understood their fear. She did not enjoy causing it, but fear was necessary. Fear was what finally forced people to act. "Continue monitoring," she ordered, "and prepare the fleet for surgical strikes on military targets if the deadline passes." In his palace, High Counselor paced back and forth like a caged animal. His advisors had fled. His generals had abandoned him. Only his personal guards remained, and even they looked at him with doubt in their eyes. "I am the High Counselor," he muttered to himself. "I have ruled for 200 years. I cannot be defeated by these primitive creatures. There must be a way." But there was no way. The humans had destroyed his fleet. They had shattered his political alliances. They had turned his own people against him. Outside the palace, crowds gathered. They were not there to support their leader. They were there to demand his surrender. Mothers held signs showing pictures of their children. Fathers shouted that they would not let their families die for pride. The protests grew larger with every passing hour. Ambassador moved through the crowd with her hood pulled low. She had spent months secretly helping the humans because she believed was leading her people to ruin. Now she watched as her worst fears came true. She approached the palace gates and showed her credentials to the guards. They recognized her and let her pass. She walked through empty halls to the throne room where sat alone in the darkness. "High Counselor," she said, "you must surrender." Looked up at her with hatred in his eyes. "You are the traitor. You gave our secrets to the humans. This is your fault." Did not deny it. "I gave them information because I wanted to prevent exactly this situation. I hoped that if they knew our weaknesses, they would negotiate instead of fight. But you forced their hand. You killed their ambassador for no reason except your own arrogance. He was a spy. He was innocent and you know it." Stepped closer. "Look outside. Your people are begging you to surrender. They do not want to die for your mistakes. They never asked for this war." was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "If I surrender, they will execute me." Shook her head. "The humans have promised a fair trial. That is more than you gave Daniel Carter." The words struck like a physical blow. He had watched the recording of the execution many times since the war began. He had seen the human ambassador face death with dignity and courage. He had heard those final words, "They should." Carter had known this would happen. He had known that his death would unleash something terrible, and he had faced it without fear. Realized in that moment that he had never truly understood humans. He had seen them as weak because they preferred peace. He had not understood that their peace was a choice, not a necessity. When pushed too far, they became something far more dangerous than any warrior species. "Very well," he said at last. His voice was hollow. "I will surrender." The next morning, High Counselor was escorted out of his palace in chains. The crowds that had demanded his surrender now watched in silence as he was led to a shuttle. Some threw things at him. Others simply stared with cold satisfaction. The shuttle carried him to Admiral Monroe's flagship. Guards handed him over to human soldiers at the airlock. For the first time in 200 years, was not in control of his own fate. Admiral Monroe met him in the ship's conference room. Captain and Senator Price stood beside her. Noticed that they did not gloat or mock him. Their faces were serious, almost sad. "High Counselor," Monroe said, "you are under arrest for the murder of Ambassador Daniel Carter. You will be transported to Axiom Prime Station to face trial before a reconstituted Galactic Council." Said nothing. There was nothing left to say. President Cole appeared on the conference room's main screen. His face was broadcast simultaneously across the galaxy. "People of the Empire," he said, "people of the Galactic Council, today marks the end of a terrible chapter in our shared history. High Counselor will face justice for his crimes, but Earth does not seek revenge against your people." He paused to let his words sink in. "We came to your space not as conquerors but as seekers of justice. We have not bombed your cities. We have not slaughtered your civilians. We have not done to you what you would have done to us, because that is not who we are." The screen showed images of human ships leaving orbit. They were departing without demanding territory or tribute. "Earth asks only for justice and equality. We ask for a permanent seat on the Galactic Council. We ask for our people to be treated with respect and dignity. We ask for the galaxy to understand that humanity will not be bullied, threatened, or murdered without consequence." President Cole's expression softened slightly. "We also ask for peace. Real peace built on mutual respect rather than fear. The choice is yours." The broadcast ended. The trial of High Counselor lasted 3 weeks. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Communications showed that he had planned Daniel Carter's execution for months. Witnesses that he had ignored all calls for mercy. The verdict was unanimous: guilty of murder and conspiracy against peace. Was sentenced to life imprisonment in a facility on a remote moon. He would spend the rest of his days in a small cell, watched by guards from a dozen different species. His empire was gone. His legacy was shame. On Axiom Prime Station, a memorial was built for Daniel Carter. It stood in the same plaza where he had been executed. Species that had once ignored his death now came to pay their respects. They left flowers and gifts and messages of apology. Captain visited the memorial on the day it was completed. He stood before the stone pillar with Daniel's name carved into it and thought about everything that had happened. "We did it, Daniel," he said quietly. "We made them pay for what they did to you, and we did it without becoming monsters ourselves." He placed his hand on the pillar for a moment, then turned and walked away. Senator Price took Earth's seat on the Galactic Council. It was a permanent seat, with full voting rights. The other species had voted unanimously to grant it. No one opposed humanity anymore. At his first official session, A delegate asked him what lesson the galaxy should learn from this war. Price considered the question carefully before answering. "The lesson is simple," he said. "Humanity prefers peace. We would rather build than destroy, cooperate than compete, befriend than conquer, but never mistake our kindness for weakness." He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every delegate. "And never, ever harm our people." The chamber was silent. Everyone understood. Admiral Lisa Monroe returned to Earth as a hero. She was promoted to Fleet Admiral, the highest rank in Earth's military. But she did not celebrate. Too many good people had died for this victory. She stood on the observation deck of Fleet Command and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was learning to respect humanity. Somewhere out there, Daniel Carter's sacrifice was being honored. She thought about the future. There would be more challenges ahead, more tests of humanity's resolve, more enemies who thought they could push Earth around. But now the galaxy knew the truth. Humans were not weak. They were not cowards. They were a species that valued life and peace, but would fight with terrifying ferocity to protect their own. Admiral Monroe smiled slightly as she watched a new class of warships being assembled in orbital shipyards. They had thought they could break humanity's spirit by killing one man. Instead, they had awakened something far more powerful than they could ever imagine. They had united humanity. They had shown the galaxy what humans were capable of, and they had guaranteed that no one would ever make the same mistake again. Daniel Carter had died so that humanity could take its rightful place among the stars. His sacrifice would never be forgotten.